My name is Emily. I'm 31 years old. I work as a benefits planner for a life insurance company. It's a global business, and the pay is decent. Since I visit various companies for work, I have opportunities to meet people, including men. However, recently one of these acquaintances put me through a terrible ordeal. Because of his greed for money, he ruined a significant milestone in my life. Today, I'd like to share the story of that unfortunate event. I lost both my parents in a car accident when I was in elementary school. My maternal grandparents raised me. I attended local public schools for middle and high school, and then went to a somewhat expensive college. My grandparents, who didn't have much money, took out loans so I could go to college. After I got a job, I took over the remaining debt. As a result, I was a bit strapped for cash when I met David through a mutual work connection. David laughed when I nervously shared my financial situation with him. "I'm in a similar boat. Still paying off student loans," he said. "So, we're the debt repayment couple, huh?" "Exactly. I'd love to be debt-free as soon as possible." During our time dating, I was incredibly happy with David. We didn't have a lot of disposable income, but every day was fulfilling. Over the 3 years we dated, David kept getting promotions. His company valued ambition and talent, so he moved up quickly. As David's income improved, so did the quality of our relationship. I also picked up the pace on my debt repayment, not wanting to be left behind. David always had kind words for me. "Don't push yourself too hard, Emily. If you collapse, I'll be ruined too. You're the reason I can work hard like this." "Thank you. It's nice to hear that. Don't push yourself too hard either. You're the reason I can keep going too." We supported each other emotionally, helping each other get through our tough daily jobs. Looking back, that period of my life was fulfilling and purposeful. During this high point in our lives, David finally proposed to me. "I want you by my side forever, as partners supporting each other." "I'm so happy." "Thank you. Likewise, I look forward to our future together." We decided to rent a new condo and move in together. Both of us earning well, I felt our relationship strengthened. That's the vibe I got. This was a little before we actually started living together. I met David's parents. They were thrilled to meet me. According to them, David scored a beautiful and talented woman who graduated from a good university. I remember feeling awkward, yet flattered by their compliments. I didn't have parents, and my grandparents who raised me were already in a nursing home. So, I decided David should meet my high school best friend, Melissa. We met at a cafe near Melissa's condo. "Nice to meet you, I'm David. Happy to finally meet you." "I'm Melissa. Emily told me a lot about you. Please take good care of her, she can be vulnerable at times." Melissa is the same age as me, but she's incredibly stable and reliable. I was always the little sister figure, leaning on her for support. The big turning point came a few months after this initial cafe meeting. And once again, Melissa would come to my aid. In any case, introducing David to my best friend went off without a hitch. David and I then decided it was time to dive into wedding planning. Around the time we began planning, David's work started demanding more of him. Even on days we planned to go dress shopping, urgent calls would come in. "I have to work this weekend. I know it's a big day for us. I'm really sorry." "It's okay. I'll try on the dresses, snap some pictures, and we can pick one later." "Thank you. I'd rather be there in person, but I appreciate the gesture." David was genuinely busy around this time. He was working almost every weekend and even had work trips during the week. I was pretty much planning the wedding by myself. which was exhausting since I had my job too. But all the hard work paid off. The ceremony and the reception exceeded our expectations. My coworkers livened up the party with performances, and Melissa gave a touching speech. My grandparents, who are in a nursing home, sent their blessings through a video message. After waving goodbye to the last of our guests, David and I finally had a moment to relax in the backstage room. I remember David casually checking his phone right after our small talk. The surprised look on his face, David left the table while on the phone. I thought he might be having some work trouble. But little did I know, something was changing behind the scenes. A change big enough to affect both David's and my life. In the backyard of the venue, there was a steep staircase for staff use. In my gown, I had to pass by those stairs to change. The staff were distracted by someone calling from across the hallway. I think it was in that moment when I was off guard. My body flew through the air. Someone screamed. A powerful impact. And a series of intense pain overwhelmed me. I fell down the steep stairs in my gown and lost consciousness. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. Bandages were wrapped around my arms and legs, and I was bruised and scraped all over. No broken bones, just bruises and contusions, and thankfully, my brain activity was normal. The nurse explained that I had fallen down the stairs at the venue. I had no idea how it happened. A few hours later, an even more puzzling event unfolded. David, who had come into my hospital room, suddenly broke up with me. "You're useless to me now. Here's $30,000 as a settlement."
What? Wait a minute. What's going on? Explain yourself.
"Just lie down and shut up. You'll make your injuries hurt. I told you, you're useless to me now. I've found another woman I love. I'm marrying her." "Sorry, Emily.
Are you kidding me? We just had our wedding ceremony. And now this."
"But we haven't filed the marriage certificate yet. Was waiting for our anniversary to file the paperwork. Turns out, it was the right call. Never thought this would happen." David looked genuinely happy. He couldn't care less about my injuries or suffering. "I'll give you all the wedding gifts as a get-well-soon present. Bye."
Wait, David! David!
He didn't hear me. David left, laughing. I cried, clinging to Melissa, who had come to visit me. Tears streaming down my face, I told her everything. Melissa silently patted my head, listening until the end. "It's been so tough. I'm furious that this happened to you, Emily. Focus on healing for now. I'll look for the culprit." "The culprit?"
Yes, the culprit. The person who pushed you down those stairs. I suspect it's David. He's definitely off. He was even laughing."
"Laughing? When?"
"I was waiting for you to change so we could leave together. Then ambulances showed up, and it was chaos. They said you had fallen down the stairs. That's when I saw it. As they were carrying you, he had this nasty smile on his face."
Just imagining it sent chills down my spine. Did David push me down the stairs? What could he possibly gain from it? Anyway, I decided to focus on healing, just like Melissa advised me. As my physical wounds began to heal, so did the wounds of my heart. My deep sorrow turned into fierce anger. I couldn't rest until the responsible parties were held accountable. My heart, once soaring with happiness, now became consumed with thoughts of revenge. A few weeks later, Melissa and I lured David to a cafe. We had gathered all the evidence we needed and were ready for payback. I was set on getting even. David seemed different than when we were dating. He was dressed flamboyantly and was wearing accessories that he never wore before. In a good mood, David handed me an envelope.
What's this? A stack of cash? What's the meaning of this? It's a get-well gift. Good to see that both your scars and bruising have healed up. How generous of you. Do tell, what brought this on? Yeah, why don't you explain yourself? Why did you betray Emily?
David's smirk only became more nauseating. He looked so smug that it was creepy.
Actually, the woman I've been seeing won $10 million in the lottery. $10 million?
Yes. So, what's 10K or 20K to me now? Apparently, David had been involved with another woman even before we were married. She hit the jackpot right after our wedding ceremony. David changed his mind after learning about it. And in a fit of excitement, he pushed me down the stairs. He must have thought he could smoothly transition into a new life with her once I was out of the picture. What a selfish man. I felt the flames of revenge burn deep within me.
I can't forgive you. I'll report you to the police.
Whoa there. Don't make it sound like I pushed you.
There's no evidence. The staff said you slipped and fell.
True, that's what the staff testified. But they only reported what they saw. Melissa had done her own in-depth investigation.
I asked the venue staff to show me all the security footage. On one of the tapes, there's a brief moment that shows a hand pushing Emily's back.
Startled, Melissa showed David her phone. It was a freeze frame of the moment of the crime.
The color of the perpetrator's clothes. It matches the frock coat you were wearing. Nobody else at the venue was wearing that color that day. No way, you've got to be kidding.
Gone was his earlier confidence. David began to tremble and turned pale. He seemed to have given up. He came forward and apologized deeply.
Please, I beg you. Don't tell anyone. Just spare me from the police. So you admit you're a criminal. Will you turn yourself in, or should I call the authorities? What's it going to be? Damn it!
David left the cafe with us and immediately turned himself in at the nearest police station. He tried to hire a lawyer for a settlement, but I refused. In the end, David was charged, found guilty, and fined. I also didn't forget to go after David's mistress, whose name I got from him, Rebecca. I called her to meet me, fully intending to get an elaborate apology. To my surprise, she showed up at the cafe in rather plain clothes. My memory was still vivid with David's flashiness the day we reunited. I had thought the one who won the $10M would be just as flashy. I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused because of me.
Well, he was blinded by your $10M, too.
About that $10M. Rebecca revealed a shocking truth to me. I couldn't help but believe her tearful plea. She apologized many times. After that, without saying a word to David, she quietly disappeared. Several weeks later, I got a call from David on my mobile phone. He wanted to meet and talk. He seemed pretty desperate. Of course, I understood why. When I met David again, he was much more modestly dressed than before.
I can't get in touch with Rebecca. Do you know where she is? Why would I know where your $10 million lady is? Right, yeah. Listen, Emily, I've given you a total of $40K, right? No, actually $60K if we include the compensation.
Is that so?
I hardly remember. Can you return half of that money? Or even just $10K?
No.
But I do have some valuable information to gift you. Information? Yes, information that's very important for you.
I took out my mobile phone and played a pre-recorded video. David's eyes widened. It was Rebecca. I had recorded her before she left town. David, I have to apologize to you. I'm really sorry. The story about me winning $10 in the lottery was a lie. I lied because I couldn't bear the thought of you marrying someone else.
A lie? The whole $10 million story was a lie.
I'm truly sorry. I just apologized to Emily as well. I plan to disappear from this town. I can't tell you where I'm going. I'm really sorry for ruining both of your lives. David was stunned, speechless for a long time after the video ended. He looked completely shocked. It wasn't funny when I thought about being in his shoes. Pushing your spouse down the stairs for a non-existent $10. Fooled by a lie, impulsively committing a crime, and losing $60,000 including the compensation. Who would want to live their life thinking they're such a pathetic person? Leaving David as he was, head down and immobile, I walked out of the cafe gripping the receipt. That was a few days after our encounter at the cafe. My phone buzzed again. Another call from David. Look, I've come to my senses. I was wrong. Can we start over?
You've got some nerve, spouting lines like that. Especially after you messed up a chapter of my life.
The real culprit here is Rebecca for lying to me. If she hadn't lied.
Hadn't lied? So you wouldn't have pushed me down the stairs, blinded by greed? Cut it out. You were already the worst when you cheated on me. Who would give a man like you a second chance?
Those $10 million from Rebecca exposed the real David. In that sense, I could almost thank her for her lie. It saved me from wasting my life on a worthless man. David tried to keep the conversation going, desperate to keep me on the line. It was a pathetic and futile struggle. I ended the call, feeling like I was pushing away someone who was desperately chasing after me. David had quit his job long ago, banking on Rebecca's $10 million lie. Now, it seemed he had to find new work. Melissa told me this as we shared drinks at my place over the weekend. She'd run into David in town and heard it straight from him. He can't get steady work because of his criminal record.
Last I saw him, he was delivering food on a bike.
So, he's doing delivery? Sounds like gig work. Seems that way. He's doing whatever he can find. Melissa shared some of David's job-hopping history. Traffic control for roadwork, janitorial services, lunchbox factory staff, warehouse worker.
He looked worn out, all tanned and sunburned. I told him this is karma for betraying Emily, and he nodded. If he's aware, that's good. I hope he continues to repent for the rest of his life.
Would you consider starting over with him if the chance came?
No way! A man who'd push a bride down the stairs in her wedding dress? Are you kidding?
Melissa and I laughed heartily at that. Even if he threw $10 million my way, I'd still decline. A few days later, David contacted me again.
Can you lend me $100? I'm really struggling here. No way. Please, don't contact me again. And no following me. If you do, I'm going to the police.
Wait, Emily. I'm really sorry.
Don't you dare call me by my first name.
I hung up and immediately blocked David's number. If he crosses a line, I have no problem reporting him. My post-David life has been pretty smooth. I got a good settlement, and he even paid for the venue. My grandparents in the nursing home and my coworkers all sympathize with me. Which is to be expected. Anyone would feel sorry for a bride betrayed right after her wedding. But I'm not overly pessimistic about my current situation. My career is thriving, and my personal life is fulfilling. Melissa and I are even thinking of going to a singles event. Having a divorce history isn't going to hold me back. I'm strong enough to make my fall down the stairs a talking point. Life has so much more in store. I'm going to find someone amazing and build a happy home.
Stop being a baby just because you're pregnant.
John was clutching his glass on the table, about to throw it at me. I covered my stomach with my hands, trying to protect it, and closed my eyes. When I opened them, Harper was crouching in front of me. Harper was holding her head with her hands. Blood was seeping from her hands. Harper, lying on her side, was looking at me.
Sis, take this.
Harper handed me her smartphone. I nodded firmly and took it. This would be our weapon. I'm Mia, 29 years old. I quit my job due to my pregnancy and became a housewife. My husband John and I were colleagues at the same company and got married after a company romance. What brought us together was our mutual hobby of stock investing. Many people invest and save for a better life, but it's rare to find someone who considers it a hobby. We clicked because of our unusual hobby. After many niche dates, we felt secure in our future and decided to get married. After marriage, we lived in a modest apartment close to our workplace, but after discovering my pregnancy, we decided to move in with John's family. John's father David had passed away 3 years ago, leaving behind his mother Grace and his sister Harper, who were living in a spacious house that seemed too large for just the two of them, so John and I decided to move in. Although it was a bit far from work, the house was spacious and had recently been renovated, making it a comfortable home. Grace was kind, and she welcomed me with a smile when we first met. Harper seemed shy and someone who was hard to read, giving off a plain impression. When Grace found out about my pregnancy, she was overjoyed, saying,
"Thank you for getting pregnant with John's child. I'll support you as much as I can,"
and celebrated grandly. When we decided to live together, she said,
"Let's have fun living together,"
which made me feel that there wouldn't be any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict in this house. Looking back, I was mistaken, and this was the beginning of my hell. On the first day of living together, Grace showed me around the house. Grace had always been considerate towards me, always saying,
"Thank you for being with John,"
whenever possible. My friends were against me living with my in-laws, but I wasn't worried at all. My only concern was whether I could get along with Harper. She was always looking down and never made eye contact when speaking. Honestly, it was hard to understand what Harper was thinking, and I found it creepy. She's just shy.
Harper is delicate but very skillful with her hands.
Grace and John both seemed very considerate of Harper. John bragged about Harper, being proud of her and adored her unusually. According to Grace, Harper would only ask to send a package once or twice a month and usually stayed in her room. She had been reclusive since high school and was not employed. However, she seemed to contribute generously to the household expenses. John's family was a bit strange but a good family, and I felt happy to be a part of it. That happiness lasted until we moved in. That night, after moving in, I was busy unpacking and didn't notice John had returned. I heard a loud voice from the entrance. It seemed like John was angry at the entrance. John, prone to complaining, often found fault with shop clerks and delivery personnel. Assuming he was complaining about damaged moving boxes, I headed to the entrance.
"What's wrong? Why are you yelling? Did something break?" "It's not that. The man of the house has returned. Come greet me at the entrance."
I was stunned by John's selfish remark.
"What?"
John seemed irritated by my lack of response.
"Don't mess with me. When the man of the house comes home, you're supposed to greet him at the entrance. It's common sense."
I was frightened by John's anger and apologized. "Sorry. I was busy unpacking." John glared at me with a red face.
"Also, I'm the man of the house. I'm the head of the household. From now on, you should honor me when you speak to me.
I was overwhelmed by his sudden change. That day, I was scolded by John for not preparing dinner and not getting the bath ready. Harper also came out of her room to see what was happening, but then she disappeared and didn't show her face again. After John went to bed, I cried in the bathroom. Why do I have to endure this treatment? I remembered the kind John before we got married. The days he took off his coat to cover me in the cold, the times he gently pulled me close when cars passed by. What was all that for? This isn't the real John. I tried to convince myself that he was just in a bad mood, that he's actually a kind and caring person. Otherwise, I couldn't see how I could continue with this marriage. I used to be so happy, but now all I feel is anxiety. And it seemed like everyone was against me, with no allies. All I could do was hope that John's mood would improve by tomorrow. But my faint hope was quickly dashed. John's attitude the next morning was the same as the night before. Hey, or you. He would refer to me as so, not calling my name.
Hey, you must always obey Mom,
he said, treating me more like a slave than a housewife.
Work for Harper's sake.
John kept saying it was for Harper's sake. His affection for Harper was abnormal. While John was smiling at Grace and Harper, he never showed me a smile. His gaze was always cold towards me. I started to have severe morning sickness around 5 months into my pregnancy, making it difficult to move. Whenever I lay down on the sofa, John would invariably scold me.
Hey, what are you lying down for?
I feel sick from the morning sickness. Please let me rest a bit.
Morning sickness? That's nothing serious. You're not working, so the least you could do is keep this house clean.
Hearing John's irritated voice made the cramps in my stomach feel worse. I was probably tensing up from stress. I knew it wasn't good for the baby, so I tried not to provoke John. If I woke up even slightly after John, he would yell at me. If he found me dozing off, he would start shouting. I was always under surveillance by John, feeling uncomfortable every day. I even thought about divorce, but I couldn't muster the courage for the sake of the baby. John had a good public facade, seen by others as the perfect husband and father. Most texts from friends where I used to work would be like,
I'm jealous that John is your husband.
John was a trusted employee at the company, good at his job and taking care of his juniors. So he was relied upon by his boss. I couldn't argue and just replied nonchalantly, but the text I received the other day was unbelievable.
John was saying that you became selfish and that you're giving him a hard time ever since you got pregnant.
You better appreciate you have a good husband, or you're going to be punished. Reading that text, I lost all hope. John was playing the perfect husband outside, and making me out to be the villain. Everyone saw his kind facade, but his real face was that of a selfish man. I complained about John to my parents, thinking my mom would understand, that she would comfort me. Maybe she would suggest coming back home to give birth. But my mom took John's side as well. She was completely deceived by John. I was lectured instead. I couldn't even go back to my parents' home. For the sake of the baby, I had no choice but to endure and keep living. But John wasn't my only enemy.
Isn't this soup a bit too salty? Are you trying to make me sick?
For some reason, Grace's attitude towards me changed, and she started ordering me around as well. Ever since John changed, Grace began to harass me. Every day, Grace would nitpick and make sarcastic comments.
The way you fold the laundry isn't how we do it here. The bathroom isn't cleaned properly.
I'm sorry. I had no choice but to obediently follow Grace's words. But when I first met Grace, she had said,
I'll support you as much as I can.
Where did that go? Was I foolish to believe those words? Grace took advantage of me doing all the housework to laze around during the day or go out to lunch with her friends. And she would always instruct me to make John's favorite dishes. Moreover, she specified shopping at high-end supermarkets. John's favorite dishes take a lot of effort and time to prepare. While feeling dizzy from morning sickness, I somehow managed to cook, and without any appetite, I sat down at the dining table, only to find that somehow the dishes were credited to Harper, with John stuffing his cheeks while lowering the corners of his eyes.
Harper prepared the meal again today. You really did a great job, Harper.
Unbelievably, all my household chores were being credited to Harper. Harper made all the dishes, and she's also doing the cleaning and laundry. Grace explained to John. Harper, who stays in her room, wasn't there. I wonder how it feels to be praised for something you didn't do. What could Harper be thinking, staying in her room all this time? The harassment towards me wasn't just psychological. John didn't give me any living expenses. Before we got married, we agreed to contribute to a joint account. But John's portion never got deposited. I've been dipping into the savings my parents gave me before marriage and even used up my investment earnings. Recently, I almost had my debit card from my single days taken away. I resisted desperately to keep it. After that, the treatment I received from John and Grace was terrible. Thinking only about protecting the unborn child, I continued my daily chores. Such a life couldn't last. My mind and body were nearing their limits. Struggling to get by, I reached 8 months of pregnancy. One holiday, I spent the morning listening to Grace's complaints while doing the cleaning and laundry. I had to rest frequently because of the tightness in my stomach and could hardly move. Grace, who should understand the difficulties of late pregnancy, pretended not to notice and complained. After complaining, Grace left saying she had plans with friends. John had gone out for golf since the morning. Unable to move due to the physical strain of daily work, I reluctantly hired a housekeeping service. In the afternoon, the housekeeper came and did the cleaning, laundry, grocery shopping, and even meal prep. Feeling relieved that the chores were done, I collapsed on the sofa. Unable to keep my eyes open. I needed to put away my half-drunk glass on the table or John would scold me. I must tidy up. But my consciousness faded. I woke up with a pain in my thigh. John was looking down at me. With a furious expression. I instinctively rubbed my thigh. Apparently kicked by John.
Hey, what are you doing?
Instead of looking at John, I looked upstairs. Harper was peering down. I hurriedly apologized.
I'm sorry, I wasn't feeling well and must have fallen asleep. Pregnancy is no excuse to slack off on household chores.
John kicked my thigh again. I grimaced in pain.
Why are you letting a housekeeping service do the chores?
John was holding the housekeeping contract in his hand. I had left the contract on the table, intending to put it away but fell asleep. Normally, I would apologize, but I had reached my limit. I sighed.
I'm 8 months pregnant and have been warned of the risk of preterm labor due to strong abdominal tightness. Pregnancy isn't an illness. What are you slacking off for?
I stared at John. Who does he think the father of this child is?
You went out to enjoy golf. My body is at its limit.
I mustered the courage to confront John. John clenched his fists, trembling with anger. Despite my fear, I felt more indignant towards John.
Let me rest a bit. I hired the housekeeping service with my own money. There's nothing wrong with that.
John was about to retort angrily, but I couldn't take in his words. I ignored him and closed my eyes. John's loud yelling made me open my eyes again. He was clutching a glass on the table, about to throw it at me. I covered my stomach with my hands and closed my eyes. Then I heard the sound of breaking glass. When I opened my eyes, Harper was crouched in front of me. Harper was holding her head with her hands. Blood was seeping from her hands.
Harper, are you okay?
I jumped up and called out to her. Harper, still crouching. I'm okay, she replied in a weak voice. The floor was staining with blood. John stood there, dumbfounded. Even when I called out to John, he remained frozen, clutching his head. Despite being shaken, I managed to call for an ambulance. With Harper still crouched down, I brought a towel and pressed it against her head. The towel quickly soaked with blood. The amount of blood made me fear for Harper's life. I was terrified, but I knew Harper was the real victim here. Wanting to comfort her, I hugged her as tightly as I could. After a while, I heard sirens, and the ambulance arrived. I managed to help Harper stand up and walked her to the entrance, supporting her. John, in a panic,
I'm not to blame. It's your fault for not doing the chores,
kept muttering. At the entrance, I told John to accompany us in the ambulance. However, Harper objected.
My brother? No, he's the one who hurt me. I don't want him.
John looked displeased, but said nothing more. Urged by the paramedics, I got into the ambulance. Harper, lying down, looked at me. Sis, take this. Harper handed me her smartphone. I nodded and took it firmly. This would become our weapon. I thanked Harper. Upon arriving at the hospital, Harper was immediately taken to the treatment room. I had informed John of the hospital's name where Harper was taken. While waiting for Harper's treatment, John and Grace arrived.
What did you do to Harper?
Grace immediately directed her anger at me upon arrival. I wanted to retaliate but restrained myself due to being in a hospital, mindful of other patients. Grace, undeterred by the surroundings, loudly complained to me.
I won't forgive you if Harper's work is affected.
I was astounded by her concern. Grace was more worried about Harper's loss of income than her well-being. Harper's profession is a jewelry designer. She designs rings, earrings, and bracelets from her room. Highly popular and contracted with major jewelry brands. Harper's income must be significantly higher than John's annual salary. Grace's primary concern seemed to be the potential loss of income. Such a terrible mother. The seldom used car and probably even their house were likely purchased with Harper's earnings. It was exactly as I had heard from Harper. Harper had once told me, "Mom cares more about my money than me." Watching Grace blame me, John started accusing me as well.
That's right, it's your fault. This happened because you slacked off on the chores. It's all your fault.
While they berated me nonsensically, two men in suits approached from behind. I interrupted John and Grace's complaints.
Should we ask these gentlemen here if I'm really to blame?
John and Grace turned around in surprise.
These are the police officers I called.
John and Grace were shocked.
Why would you call the police?
Because this is a serious assault case. John threw a glass, and Harper got seriously injured.
What are you talking about? You did it.
How could they twist the story like that? I stared at John, who averted his eyes. Sighing, I began playing a video on Harper's smartphone that I had received. The video captured me being kicked by John and everything up until I called the ambulance. Watching the video, Grace turned pale. She looked at John.
John, what is this all about?
John remained silent, head down. Grace turned to me.
Why do you have Harper's phone? Harper gave it to me to protect me. To protect you? What do you mean? Explain.
Grace demanded, trembling. In this household, I had one ally. Harper was on my side. From the day we moved in, Harper was aware of Grace's harassment and John's violence. She occasionally came out of her room to check on me. Horrified by how badly I was treated, and decided to leave evidence by installing hidden cameras around the house. I showed Grace additional footage.
Everything you've done to me is captured here.
The footage, complete with audio, captured John's verbal abuse and Grace's dehumanizing behavior, eliciting puzzled looks from the police officers present. John and Grace's faces contorted.
Who's the real culprit here?
I smiled maliciously.
But why would Harper side with you?
I smiled broadly.
That's because Harper was bullied and exploited by you,
I said in a low, menacing voice. Harper, too, was a victim of Grace. John and Grace, perhaps intimidated by my presence, took a step back. Until John and I lived together, Harper was harassed by Grace. Harper started her career as a jewelry designer while a student, initially earning very little. Grace, frustrated that Harper's pursuit was not profitable, tried to kick her out. It was David, still alive at the time, who stopped her. David created a bank account specifically for Harper and provided financial support. Eventually, Harper's talent was recognized, and she started earning an income, but by then, David had passed away. Harper planned to leave home to escape Grace, but found herself unable to do so when Grace took control of her bank account. For Grace, keeping Harper at home meant having more income. Moreover, with Harper around, John would often return home. This made Grace even less willing to let Harper go. Grace was frequently harsh to Harper. She repeatedly say,
John is my only real child.
Harper had a boyfriend and considered eloping when our living together was decided. And that's when the harassment shifted towards me. The night we moved in, I was berated by Grace and ended up crying in the bathroom. That was when Harper approached me.
I never thought she would bully a pregnant woman. That person is a devil in human form. Will you join me in defeating the devil?
From that day on, our joint struggle against Grace began. The smartphone Harper handed me in the ambulance became our weapon. Grace was flustered by the incontrovertible video evidence. John stood frozen, trembling. At that moment, the police approached John and Grace.
Let's hear the details at the police station,
they said in a cold, impersonal tone. John turned to leave, but the police blocked his way.
I haven't done anything wrong. I have no obligation to go,
said Grace, trying to push past the police. Then, the treatment room door opened, and Harper, with a bandage on her head, came out in a wheelchair.
Are you okay, Harper? I'm fine, brother,
Harper replied without looking at John and asked the police to take them away.
Please take these two to the police station quickly. I'll do anything. Testify, provide evidence, you name it.
Harper glared coldly at John and Grace. The police took John and Grace by the arms and led them away. Are you okay, Harper? I rushed to Harper after the police took John and Grace away.
Yes, I'm fine. Just a small cut on my forehead,
Harper said, smiling at me. I smiled back, relieved.
Head bleeds easily. And I'm just in my wheelchair for a precaution since I injured my head. I'm glad it's not serious.
Harper couldn't be discharged until the test results came out and had to be hospitalized for the day. As I was about to go back for our things, Harper's boyfriend, Michael, arrived. Michael was shocked to see Harper in the wheelchair and hugged her, half crying. Harper, reassured, also cried. I quietly left the room, not wanting to intrude. The next day, Harper was discharged after the tests showed no serious issues. Harper and I returned home together. Michael, worried, followed us. Grace and John had not yet returned. We decided to search for Harper's debit card, thinking it was our only chance. In the afternoon, John and Grace returned. Seeing me sitting on the living room sofa, they immediately started accusing me.
How could you? Yeah, because of you, Mom and I got lectured at the police station, John said.
I stood my ground, retorting. After all, I had strong allies by my side.
Be glad you weren't filed a complaint against it. You even led my sister astray. I'll never forgive you for this.
Then, Harper and Michael came down the stairs.
Who's been led astray?
John, seeing Harper, was taken aback. Harper held the debit card in her hand. Grace's expression changed instantly when she found it.
John, Mia wants to give you something.
Harper hinted at me with a look. I presented the divorce papers in front of John.
You're not seriously thinking of divorcing me, are you? Yes, I am.
John clutched the divorce papers tightly.
Enough with the jokes. Just sign it. It's more manly to just fill it out quickly. I've always thought you and Mia weren't a good match. What do you mean? Mia is too good for you. Now, hurry up and write.
Like under a spell, John placed the divorce papers on the living room table and started to fill them in. John, who used to verbally abuse me and treat me like a slave, was now doing exactly as his sister had said. I can see why Harper called John creepy. Even as he filled out the divorce papers, John kept looking at Harper. I snatched the divorce papers as if to claim them. Submitting these would sever my ties with this house.
Shall we go then?
John tried to reach out to Harper. Unperturbed, Harper took Michael's hand and headed for the entrance. I gave John and Grace a cold look.
I will never forget what you did to me, Grace. And don't you forget either, John.
With that, I left the house with Harper and the others.
This isn't over yet,
I muttered to myself. I sent an email to John's workplace, dubbing it a divorce notification. I also sent a video to my friend at his workplace. Now, everyone will see John's true colors. Lately, he hasn't been talking to anyone. My friend emailed me.
I think John's going to quit his job soon.
Later, I consulted a lawyer for free advice and filed for divorce alimony and child support. Given John's nature, I also requested a restraining order to prevent stalking. I agreed not to file a police report in exchange for getting the child support in a lump sum. Now, I won't have to worry about non-payment. John didn't come near me thanks to the restraining order, but I heard he came begging to Harper. John ambushed Harper on her way home, crying and clinging to her feet. John directed all his anger at Grace.
It's your fault Harper hates me. Mia leaving is also your fault. You took away all my happiness.
After lashing out at Grace with his grievances, he left the house. Harper told me that Grace had contacted her. Grace seems to be living like a recluse, concerned about the neighbors' eyes. To that Harper told me,
"This is the retribution for what she did to me."
With a cold look. 2 months later, I gave birth to a healthy boy. Harper was there for the birth.
I want to have a cute baby like yours someday.
Michael, standing behind her, blushed, which I found adorable. I sent the video to my parents, who had blindly trusted John and refused to believe me. My parents apologized profusely and went to complain to Grace. Their house had become littered with trash with no one cleaning. Grace's response was slow, even to their complaints, and my parents left feeling terrified. Anyway, I have a son who is the apple of my eye and a strong friend named Harper. Life as a single mother will have its challenges, but it seems like it will be enjoyable. I still have the money I saved from investments before marriage, and it's doing well, so there's no rush to return to work. Seeing how remorseful my parents are, it might be nice to go back home. I'm considering taking it easy at my parents' house for a while.